Okay, thank you very much. So the first rule of the evening is that you must look at myself and Ian, and you're not allowed to look up there. Okay, it's very rude not to look at people when they're speaking to you. Okay, joking apart, on behalf of Ian Robertson and myself, Mac Lachlan, as co-curators of Happy, it's our pleasure to welcome you here with the Science Gallery and celebrating 50 years of psychology in Trinity, which was really the idea, the inspiration behind this exhibition. How would we celebrate psychology in a way that could sort of contribute to the, country more broadly, and also engage sort of good scientific work? So with that in mind, we want to engage, that's the very active word, engage you through some experimentation that Ian's going to magician up for you. And after he has done that, then I'm going to talk about some of the, social and policy issues around Happy, like why do we care about happiness, what's it good for, and how could Ireland become a bit happier. So with that, I'll hand over to Ian.
Thank you very much. Did you hear the one about the two Scotsmen? It's been a lovely day today, hasn't it? How many of you feel hugely cheerful? Yeah, there's a few, okay. How many of you feel a bit fed up? Yeah, there's a few. How many of you have bought shares today? What? Well, it should be no surprise that our mood goes up and down with the weather. But what might be a surprise is that people are more likely to buy shares on cloudy days. That's been established by economists. So I guess that Enda and Eamon, and they're also more likely to take risks in cloudy days. So I guess that Enda and Eamon will be hoping for sunshine on the 31st of May. So I'd like to give you some simple exercises here. They should be good fun. Just in case some of you think they may seem trivial, I'll try and draw out at the end some higher level, quite important principles from them. And then Mac's going to tease out the implications of mood and happiness and well-being into the social realm, as he said. So I need to, you're forming two teams today. And the two teams are the people on these 4 rows, okay, and then the 2 rows here. So those of this side of the room are the lefts, and all the rest are the rights. Okay, I'd like both the lefties and the righties are going to. I'm going to read out 2 sets of words for each. There's going to be 2 sets of 5 words. Okay, so I would like you to write them down, and then I'll tell you what to do. So I'll read out the lefties' first set of words first. So if you write down, and if you don't have a pen, just remember them. Cold, it, desk, outside, is. Okay, and now the righties, your first 4 words are the, one, W-O-N, the, one, he, thief, lottery. Okay, you get that? Now the second, for the lefties, second group of words, paper, dropped, Sally, laptop, the. Paper, dropped, Sally, laptop, the. And then the righties, quick, got, quick, got, drive, rich, he. Quick, got, drive, rich, he. Okay. What I want you to do is, when I say go, I want you to make, out of each of these, you've got 2 lists, okay, of 5 words. Make a 4-word sentence of each of them that makes sense, and then immediately write down how much you would give to a cancer charity if they were collecting for it outside when you left. Okay? Right. Now, Can I just, first of all, say this is an experiment. I haven't been able to balance the groups and numbers, and so please bear with me. I did an experiment on the John Murray show last week to launch Happy, and came out with the reverse result of what I predicted. The first time when I did this one on the John Murray show, the launch of the whole Science Gallery program for this year, it worked brilliantly. So with that proviso, could I ask, of the lefties, how many of you wrote down more than €10 for the cancer charity? 1, 2, 3, 4. Lefties. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Righties. 1, 2. Oh, I can see trouble ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Between €5 and €10. Lefties. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. And righties? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And then less than €5? Lefties? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Righties? 1, 2, 3. Okay. I'm going to declare this statistically significant. No, so let's not be too precious about the data. There was. Let me tell you the principle of the experiment first, which has worked and did work in John Murray with hundreds of and then we'll review the data here. Kathleen Vose, the University of Minnesota, had a lovely paper in Science. And what she did, do any of you guess, what was the difference between the two sets of words that the lefts and the rights had? Any? Sorry? Negative, positive. No, there was. I think they were quite reasonably. Do you mean things like cold? See if it, yeah, not negative, positive. No, anyone notice?
The one about cold would give more than the one about thieves.
Okay. Okay, well, you're getting close, but I'm very glad because the manipulation worked in the sense that you didn't know. It was an unconscious manipulation. And that is the right people each had, in each of the words, there was a word related to money in each of your lists. So there was one and lottery, and there was rich. And what Kathleen Vose showed was that when people were unconsciously primed, and this is a classic priming task, you give people a task, and you're unconsciously altering their mental state by priming thoughts and images of money. She found that when people were unconsciously primed with thoughts of money, they became more self-sufficient, less generous, they gave less to charity, they were less helpful to other people. So if they had a stooge coming and spilling a whole lot of pencils in front of the people, and the people who'd been primed with thoughts of money picked up fewer pencils. It makes you set your chair further away from people if you're sitting down with strangers, and it makes you more inclined to choose a solitary over a social activity. So, and this is part of a large literature on money, which is an important ingredient in the reward system. And money and materialism. The more central money and materialism is to someone's values, the less happy they tend to be, which is obviously a very important fact given our current predicament. Okay, my second, so just to review the data, the neutral, the money people actually gave, six of them gave €10 versus 4. However, 5 to €10, 12 of the neutral, of the lefts versus 7 gave 5 to €10. So I'm not going to, I doubt that would meet statistical significance in the chi-squared test. Nevertheless, it's the experiment that counts, so you get an idea of what in properly controlled conditions was done. Okay, you all have a pen, or most of you have a pen. So what I'd like you to do now is I want you, the left people, I want you to put the pencil between your lips. Like that. And the right people, the righties, I want you to put it between your teeth. Like that. Okay? And I'm going to count. So you got it there? Just put it in now, and I'm going to count to 12 or 13. Okay, write down from 0 to 100, where 0 is miserable and 100 is ecstatic. Write down your mood at this moment. Okay. Okay, lefties, how many of you were more than 80? Gee, what a cheerful bunch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4. Righties, how many of you were more than 80? 2, 3, 4. Okay. 60 to 79, lefties? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11. Righties? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Another experiment bites the dust. So I'm not going to go on with your ratings because it's clearly you're a well-balanced audience. Nevertheless, in larger samples than this, it's been shown consistently that artificially placing your face in the position of a fake smile, which is what I was doing when you held that in your teeth, versus artificially putting your face in the glum position, which you did in the lips. Strangely enough, that affects your mood. And how does it do this? Well, the brain is a massively interconnected organ. And the principle is that cells that fire together wire together. So if you fake a smile, a Duchenne smile like this, the pattern of activation of the neurons, the brain cells controlling the muscles, is associatively linked with other areas in the emotion centers of the brain, such that the brain reacts to that backward feedback with the associated emotion to that faked outward smile. So it's part of the incredible connectivity of the brain, the backward connectivity of the brain. And that works with things like posture as well. So you can actually modulate and influence mood by the old adage of put on a happy smile. There is actually some grounds for saying that. Okay, third experiment. This is for the men only. Okay, left. We're going to get the left to play rock, paper, scissors with the right. Okay, now the men only on the left of the hall, I want you to hold your right hand in the rock position. Okay? The men on the right side of the hall, hold your right hand in the paper position. Okay, I'll just do that for a moment while I have a sip of coffee. Okay, just hold it there for a moment. So now I want you to write, I'm going to read out a number of adjectives, and I want you to write down between 1 and 5 how much these adjectives apply to you. Okay? 1, not at all, 5 at all. Okay, the adjectives are assertive, 1 to 5, assertive. Write down how assertive you feel between 1 and 5 just now. Persistent. Hesitating. Fearful. Esteemed. Respected. Aggrieved. Insulted. Okay. So, could I just ask, we're just going to do the first word, assertive. How many of the lefts scored 5 on assertive? 1. This is good news for SFI. Right? 1. Okay, geez, that's a... 3 to 4, lefties, 3 to 4. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5? Right, how many? 3 to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All my experiments are crashing and burning today. However, I can tell you what the results should have been with a bigger sample, properly controlled conditions. This was Schubert and his colleagues in Germany. So what they did, they contrived to get people to adopt a posture, and this only works in men, not women, to adopt a posture that was associated with power. Now, if you go to your average demonstration or celebration, football celebration, Man City last night, you have a clenched fist. And like the facial faking of emotion, that feeding back into the relevant emotion centers of the brain, so postures and a posture of power actually increases people's feeling of assertiveness, persistence, esteem and respect, and it reduces their feeling of hesitatingness, fearfulness, and being aggrieved. Is that all psychology nonsense? Well, no, because it's mediated by testosterone. The testosterone of men who hold that position for a fixed period increases measurably. And that's the backward effects of behavior into the biology of the brain. So just keep right when you go out, girls, okay? And finally, can I just ask you this question? People have a more or less fixed quota of intelligence and can't change it much. Okay, that's a statement. People have a more or less fixed quota of intelligence and can't change it much. Hands up if you strongly agree with that statement. Okay, good. Good. Ah, God, thank goodness. Yes, 1, 2, 3. A lot of people agree with this statement. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Strongly disagree? Okay, more. 50-50? Okay, right. Good. We have a reasonable. So what researchers at Columbia showed, and Carol Dweck, a wonderful researcher now at Stanford, has shown that 12 to 13-year-olds who are starting maths in secondary school, high school in the States, the extent to which they believe that intelligence is an entity, that is something that's in you, as opposed to something you can work on, fail to increase their math scores over an 18-month period as much as the ones who believe that you can work at intelligence. So there's a fatalistic belief that's very common to a lot of assumptions about behavior, and that's being strengthened by a lot of genetic studies these days where people are saying there's a gene for this and a gene for that. But the similar thing works for children in secondary school. The children who have a belief that their personality is a given, an entity, if they meet some social problems or exclusion from a group, tend to go into a negative spiral of isolation, of withdrawal, which further compounds their isolation. Whereas those who hold a model of their behavior which says, they were a difficult bunch, I'll find new friends, who didn't internalize the effects of a social situation, were more likely to recover from it and improve. So what I'd like to end with is the underlying principle, I think, underlying the experiments here and the experiments you can see in the gallery, which is that our brains are biochemically shaped, of course by our genes, of course, but that's been exaggerated these days, and we're underestimating the extent to which our brains are biochemically shaped by our environment and our actions. We can control our moods by how we choose to behave, who we interact with, and the environments we create for ourselves, family, social, economic, and political. And that's very, very important. And Ireland is a very optimistic country, and I think will get itself out of this recession, of this terrible mess, to a large extent because Ireland has a lot of that orientation towards life and themselves. Thank you.
Okay, Ian, thanks very much. I don't know if any of you recall, but when Pat Rabbitte, many years ago, was made leader of the Labour Party, it was a very rainy day, and he promised that under a Labour government there wouldn't be weather like this. We can see that today, unfortunately, there is weather like this. And really what I want to look at here is what do we know about happiness, and what, if we were to tell our government what they might do, what sort of things should we advise on? Now, Ian's already talked about materialism. And I suppose an aspect of that is related to income. So one of the things research has shown quite clearly is that richer people tend to be happier than poorer people, and it tends to be because they have access to a broader range of resources. However, there's a bit of a paradox here, because as a country gets richer, then on average, people in the country don't get any happier. So if you look at Germany over the past 40 years, it's had quite dramatically increasing gross national product. Their happiness, with their life satisfaction, has stayed just about constant. And in the United States, over the last 30 years, there's actually a downward trend. So I wonder, can anyone work out what's going on here if richer people are happier than poor people, but as countries get richer, the population doesn't get happier? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so that it's not so much to do with absolute wealth, but rather it's to do with relative wealth. So even when nations get richer, people are still making those comparisons. Of course, that has massive implications for governments all over the world, and particularly governments with huge debts, where we should perhaps not be looking so much at national income and so on, but rather the distribution of income. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Another area that's really pertinent, I guess, at the moment is the area of employment. And of course, our government is trying to create high-end jobs, as they call it, which of course we want. But some very interesting research looking at the effects of unemployment on people and how they respond to getting some sort of job, even jobs that they describe themselves as really bad jobs. So someone who feels they're reasonably high-powered and they're either in a really bad job or they're unemployed, which do you think is happier? Really bad job? Anybody? Yeah. Okay, so being in any sort of occupation gives one a sense of purpose, of contribution, structures your time, makes you feel a member of the community, and so on and so forth. So even a bad job or even a partial job or even job sharing, these sorts of things, which again they try in other countries, are things that could be looked at in Ireland. And then one of the really thorny issues, I guess, is social inequality. So if you look at the Human Development Index, Ireland scores pretty high on that. We're in the top 7. We're number 7 in the world. But in the top scoring countries, we have the greatest inequality of any of those countries. And of course, one of the things about inequality is it also creates perhaps some of those unhappy feelings connected with income. But there's been loads of research now showing the effects on health are very dramatic. So even in extremely rich countries, the greater the perception of inequality, the poorer is the health in that country. So if you're asking about the situation in Ireland with things like private healthcare, private schooling, and so on and so forth, not to say significant bailouts and very large salaries, again, there's very good research that would point in the direction of trying to create at least a perception of greater equality. And then religion. 68% of the world say that they engage in some sort of religious activity every day. Now, it's a pretty complicated story around religion. If you say at a country level, are more religious countries happier than less religious countries, the answer is no, they're not, on average. However, if you look at countries where life is very difficult, so where people have short life expectancy, where they get high rates of infections, where they have poor education, lack of employment opportunities, and feel generally insecure, in those countries that are very religious, people have significantly more positive thoughts than in those countries where there isn't religion and they have significantly more negative thoughts. So, it's a pretty complicated picture, and when you look at it, is it personal religion, is it personal prayer, or is it community religion, the idea of coming together, gathering together, sharing experience? Basically, the research shows that they're equally important. Again, a debate in our schools at the moment, of course, is should national schools be required to all have exposure to Catholicism. So there's interesting research there in terms of high-income countries that says certainly if it's happiness that we're after, and perhaps not everyone feels that's the most important thing, but if it is, then there wouldn't be any good reason that people should all be exposed to that same sort of religious education. But what about altruism? And this is perhaps moving a little further away from government control, if you like. Altruism, I suppose we all think, okay, altruism is a good thing, and there's some lovely research that looks at giving one group of people money to spend on themselves. So a group is given money and they're asked to go shopping, buy whatever you want for yourself, and they give another group of people the same amount of money and ask them to go shopping, but to buy stuff for other people. So which group comes back and says they're happier? Okay. So the groups that bought stuff for other people say they're happier. When people give things, when they give gifts to each other, the same reward centers in the brain become active as when you're experiencing something pleasurable. And furthermore, you can train people through sort of compassionate training to get more enjoyment when they give things to people and to have a higher level of activity in the reward centers. So again, from a sort of national perspective of volunteering, getting people to become more compassionate, to see the value of social participation, etc., can be good for them, never mind the people that they're also working with. And just to follow up on Ian's point about materialism, and to put a figure on it, there's a very nice piece of research that's saying, let's say Ian earns 99,000 and I earn 50,000, but he really values money and I don't. The good news is I'm still happier than him. If he earns 100,000, we're equally happy. Okay, and just two final things. One on the environment. Lots of stuff going on about the environment at the moment. All this amazing, bewildering debate about where we're going to build a children's hospital. Every day there's a new site coming up. If a children's hospital is built where there is a nice window in the wards and they can see greenery, then their recovery times will be significantly less than if they have windows looking out over concrete jungles. So I'm not suggesting it should be one place or the other, but you can maybe read between the lines. Also, kids in classrooms where they can look out over greenery perform better in exams than kids in classrooms looking out over less beautiful landscapes. So the environment in which you believe you are operating is very significant. Okay, finally, trust. Trust is a crucially important variable. A lovely experiment done some years ago where people went and dropped 10 wallets full of money in many different cities around the world. And in those wallets, they gave a name and address, and they looked at how many cities, how many of the wallets in each city were returned. And they found that there was a very close correlation to what the average person in things like Gallup polls rated as being their feeling about the trust of the nation in general. But we also have the idea of radius of trust. So who do you trust? And in particular, you might have trust in your family, but does it extend to, for instance, the guards, the school, my community? And one of the most crucial things is, do you have trust in the people that you work with? This seems to be one of the things that loads most strongly on people's sense of happiness. So, those are just some of the, I think, things that relate to policy. The idea that what we're doing here in the gallery is certainly fun, but it's also serious fun. People have talked in terms of the recent economic situation of Ireland's green gold in terms of our wonderful grass. And we have the highest grass yields in the world. I don't know if you know that. But we also have amazing social capital. So if you ask people throughout the world, how happy did you feel yesterday? people in Ireland come out the top of the world. Whatever happened yesterday, I don't know. But so we have amazing social capital. And I don't know if you've had this experience, but if you try explaining to some nationalities, I won't say which they are, what the word crack means, some people will get it immediately, and some will be very, very perplexed. Okay, so we hope that this exhibition is going to enliven awareness and participation in happiness. And we're also jointly creating the National Happy Experiment. And this is an experiment which is supported by Vodafone and is being sort of run in collaboration with Phonovation. And that's going to be an experiment where we have up to 500,000 texts from all around the country, we hope. That is going to explore a variety of different ways of responding to texts when people are asked particular questions. And at the moment, Karen Hand, sitting in the audience, and I are coming up with various dastardly and cunning plans to try and assess and perhaps even influence people's happiness. Okay, so thank you very much, and we're both open for questions.
Could I just say also great thanks to European Dublin City of Science, has been co-funding and supporting this exhibition and the National Happiness Experiment as well.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
There's a couple mics going around, so just wait until you get the mic so we have your question on the live stream. Yeah.
Do you think that young people now go to work with plugs in their ears listening to music? Will this affect the social relationships of Irish people in the next generation? They don't smile.
It may affect their survival rates when I see them walking across Nassau Street. So it's an interesting question. It's an empirical question. I just don't know the answer to that. The whole role of technology is reshaping people's behaviour. Personally, my own son was a year in Boston, and Skype just made him seem so near because it was free, so you weren't worried about the cost. He was there visually. So my feeling is that I'd be more optimistic about the social media. I'm not so sure about the listening to the earphones, though.
I think perhaps my question wasn't clear enough. It was that it so much comes from practice of interaction with people. And if you don't interact casually, as Irish people have always done, with the smaller families, will this change, as it were, the Irish character? I don't know, but it's a question.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think one way of looking at it is it sort of diminishes interaction, but there's another way of looking at it, which is that young people nowadays are much more out there all the time. So my kids who are sort of teenagers at school, when they get out of bed in the morning, they're checking their Facebook and Twittering and all the rest of it. So they have alternative communities. And I think, we see people locked in and we think, okay, they're not paying attention and they're not conversing. But they probably have much more opportunity to converse than we ever had. And they also get to choose who they converse with, which is perhaps not the luxury that we've had.
But if I could just follow up on that, I think that's true. But I'm just thinking of my DART journeys and times when there's been an older person from the country sitting opposite you, and they will always, usually, often try and engage you and make eye contact, engage you in that kind of that casual repartee, which is such a phenomenon. Whereas if you were sitting on your computer, and avoiding eye contact, so there is a possibility that connection that exists between people, between Irish people, that could be eroded but it would shape in different ways in the way you're describing. But there's incredibly plastic, our behaviour, and I think that's a real interesting proposition.
Is there a question over? Now there's one down here as well.
I just had a question about one of your experiments when you made the left-hand side clench their fist,
yeah,
and you were saying that should make them more assertive.
Yeah.
Do you think that when you put them all on the losing side of rock, paper, scissors, that might have had the opposite effect to making them assertive?
Yes. So I don't think they didn't actually. I'm sorry, I didn't make it clear. They didn't actually play the game. They were tricked into holding. They didn't want to say to them, "Hold your fist in a power clench," because that would then have brought the cognition associated with power to mind, and that could have confounded it. They were just using that device of the game to trick them into making a hand position that was associated with it. So, but yes, winning and losing has similar effects. Actually losing a game, there was a famous study of the 1994 World Cup final between Brazil and Italy, and there was researchers in Atlanta, Georgia, went into a pizza restaurant, two different restaurants, and the Brazil fans were in one and the Italians in the other. And they measured their testosterone levels before the match. And then Roberto Baggio, of course, famously missed in the penalty shootout, missed it, and Brazil won. And they went and they had to chase the Italian fans to, disconsolate chant, but they managed to get their testosterone measures and from the saliva, and they did the same, and there was this enormous increase in testosterone in the winning Brazil fans and decrease. And if you multiply that, presumably it almost certainly was the same for millions of fans at home. So you've got a mass biochemical effect, which is why the European Cup, if Ireland do well in it, is going to really benefit the economy, because people will spend more, they will get out there, they'll be more optimistic, because their brains have been biochemically engineered in a way much more salient and powerful than any medication could do.
There's actually another way in which that sort of stuff can work. There's a very nice piece of research looking at asking people to judge distance and to judge the height of a mountain. And they asked one group to make these judgments just as they are, and then they put a backpack on the other group, and they asked them to make the same judgments, and they overestimate the distance and they overestimate the height of the mountains. So.
And one thing, just if we have another question, we can get you a mic. But one thing I was curious about, because you mentioned how Irish people were the happiest in the world yesterday, and routinely come up very high on happiness international ratings. I know, yeah. But how good a judge are people of their own happiness, and does that vary internationally? Are there countries where people just say, no, we're not happy, but they actually are? Or are Irish saying we're happy, but we actually aren't?
Yeah.
Well, I think it depends on the question you ask. Okay, so if you ask people how satisfied are you with your life, Ireland actually comes out around number 15 on that. Okay, so they're 1 on how happy were you yesterday, around 15 on how satisfied are you with your life. People in Denmark, how satisfied are you with your life? Number 1. How happy were you yesterday? Number 100. So, a lot goes to how you phrase it, how people interpret it, but also you can be maybe sort of smug with life, but not that happy.
So satisfaction with life may be a better. Should the show be called Satisfied? Is that a better measurement?
I think.
Actually, we shouldn't be called that. That's a bad.
Yeah. I think there's Ruth. One of the experiments here is Ruth Burns looking at this quality that Mag was referring to, of moral elevation that comes from giving. It seems to be a kind of rather not quite happiness. It's in some ways a richer emotion that comes from giving, or helping, or witnessing an altruistic act. It's not. So I suspect, the reward. If I give you £1,000, €1,000 just now, your reward center will light up, and that will be the same reward center with the same mechanism as if I induce you to take a snort of cocaine or have sex. The same. It's a common reward. Sorry to embarrass you, but common reward center for all of these things. I suspect that it's very easy to trigger that reward center, but when it comes to more complex, higher level activities like James Joyce slaving over Ulysses, he probably, if you asked him how happy were you yesterday while he was writing that, he would have said, I was miserable, I was struggling, but there's that sense of having a wider perspective and a sense of being connected to a higher mission. So I think in some senses this happiness is a bit of an illusory phenomenon, but it's still a very important one. It seems to be capturing something, but it depends how you ask it. And there was a survey just after we launched the Happy exhibition. There was a survey where Ireland came out as almost bottom of the league in happiness. And I think it was Michael John or something. Ian, by the way, the rationale for your exhibition, for your Max exhibition has gone. And I then got the questionnaire, and the question about personal happiness was embedded in a questionnaire about the economy. It was mainly economy. So people's memories and their attention was now focused, primed to think about the economy, and in that context they rated their personal happiness. So it depends on their attention, but the rating of yesterday's happiness, I think, is a critical one, because that's real, and that's not a complex judgment you're making.
And that's what we do best then.
Yeah.
We might have time for one more question before we wrap up. Yeah.
Hi. I'm just wondering if it can be assumed that you're happier when you're singing, and also, is it possible to measure how happy you are if you're singing in a major key as opposed to a minor key? And also, if an audience, if it can be measured how happy they are if they're listening to you singing in a major key or a minor key. So.
Depends how good a singer you are.
Yeah, well, as a singer, as an off-key tenor in the Dunleary Choral Society, I feel equipped to answer that question. There are some pieces of music that reliably lower mood, and they will alter blood flow in the prefrontal cortex to make people slightly depressed. There's no doubt about that. The question of the minor versus the major key is a bit more equivocal. It's not absolutely certain that it's the minor key may be associated with other aspects of tempo or other semantics of the music that's reducing the mood. But no, music, and in terms of singing, it seems to be, particularly for old codgers like me, it seems to do really quite significant things for the brain and for mood. And I can personally attest there's nothing like, belting out some Vivaldi, with a group of other old codgers. It's fantastic. So I think singing is one of the things that's been lost in religious, the decline in religious practices, I think. And it's a source of happiness, I suspect. Yeah.
I think we're going to have to wrap up, but one last thing, since if you've participated in the exhibition, you're participating in actual research and you're becoming part of the very large sample size we hope to have. Just last thing, do you, I know there are lots of experiments in this, but do you think, and it'll take a long time to evaluate all that, but do you think you may find anything surprising out of this exhibition?
Well, I think the National Happiness Experiment is going to the real opportunity to do what I don't think anyone has done before. I think some of the manipulations they're going to do in a large enough sample could be very, very interesting indeed.
Yeah, I mean, we hope to get between 5,000 and 6,000 participants and to do things that are fun for people and that have really not been tried elsewhere. So I suppose we expect to be surprised, if that's not a contradiction.
No, sure. Well, listen, let's have a warm round of applause for our speakers tonight.